Welcome, everybody, to our Esports Weekly segment. My name is Latigris here with, of course, Pretty Hair and Gormizer. How y'all doing?
Doing great. Welcome back, by the way.
Thanks. I missed you guys so much.
Back sunburned, but happy.
Yeah, a bit burned up, but it's okay. I'm ready for the heat. And we have a lot to talk about today with all the lands that actually just took place only about a week ago.
Yeah, we had 3 of them just kind of concluding up there. Of course, we had the Vegas earlier in the month, but the PPL Spring Finals, and of course the Masters land, as well as the Console War. So I guess what was that? Makes 4 in that whole month?
4. It
Crazy.
felt like it was just 1 month of lands. Like even after one ended, it felt like the next one was pretty much starting immediately.
That's what's fun, though. That's I mean, I would love it for it to be that way all year long.
You have constant movement with all of these teams, but the first thing that we're actually going to talk about is Console Wars and taking a look at the bracket and how things shook out with the 4 teams that we invited on down, and the final with Flashpoint taking it 4-1 against Fable.
And I got to say, probably close to the expected outcomes in the semifinals. I have to say, I think Vex performed a little bit better against Fable, and maybe that was a little bit foreshadowing for what was to come in the finals, because I don't think anyone expected that upset.
And I think that was the thing. Like Fable having that 5-game set really was the tone setter, because everyone was like, well, this team was supposed to come in 3-0, 3-0, or 3-0, 4-0, I guess, and just be done.
Yeah.
And then things did not go their way. Flashpoint, on the other hand, looked phenomenal. Even though there were some shaky starts up, I want to say, in their semifinals, their finals were definitely solid.
And I wonder if this was just a case of being slept on again. I think Fable came into that tournament extremely confident, expecting to just blow everyone out of the water, as they kind of should, because as they have done in the past. But that just wasn't the case anymore, and maybe learning that lesson that all the PC teams learned in Vegas, or even frankly a little bit sooner, of sleeping on other teams from other regions just because of who they are and where they're from, is not a great strategy.
It's really tough too when we're talking about the semifinal, how yes, they won, but everyone seemed to be a bit disappointed in them as well. So when you have that standard going into it and everyone says, yeah, you won, but it doesn't matter.
Yeah. You dropped 2 games, and everyone's like, well, I mean, yeah, you won. Is it worth it? On the other side, it was kind of impressive, I think, because you get to see the EU side actually being successful, not only, I think for the first time and going into the finals, but also just being able to showcase how strong Flashpoint was, because I believe throughout their phase, like all of the phases, they were like 30-0.
Yeah.
Until they got here, and then they lost a couple of maps.
And to do it with a sub as well. Big play there from Skeppy, but that glory short-lived. What a comeback though from Fable, from Flashpoint, excuse me.
Yeah, the team overall was looking really great. The Console Wars were fun to watch because of the aggression, I feel, that a lot of the teams came through, so it leads to those awesome moments. And having a sub go from sub to the MVP of the match is pretty amazing.
I would say my favorite part of it was probably 39-0 Makoa. Like, that's just when, like, not only was it one of the biggest streaks, I think actually the biggest streak I've ever seen, but it was the last game. So it was just like the final note to end it, just an exclamation point for Legacy.
Yeah, and I mean, let's talk more about that. Let's talk more about Legacy, the fact that he was the sub for not only this Flashpoint, which is already an underdog team, but the substitute for Swiper, who is arguably their biggest celebrity personality, their most well-known player, probably one of their best players, to come in and have that type of performance, and for Flashpoint to just make those types of adjustments, because they weren't filling necessarily the same roles as one another. So being able to cover for that, as well as the fact that they're able to overcome that deficit, shows what a strong team they are.
And, I mean, they had a lot of strengths to them coming through, and I think they wanted to play also for their actual teammate that couldn't make it and prove that they're just as strong without.
I just think it was great because it's coming in, like, and I think it was the first day of interviews, Legacy was saying, like, he was, like, really nervous about performing and, like, being up to the standard for Flashpoint, and that Swiper was the one sitting at home being like, yeah, you can do this, like, you got this, don't worry about it, and, like, hyping him up. And then after they won that set, like, there was a video, like, he was all about his team winning.
Yeah, you have to kind of give credit to the rest of his team as well, because he just being allowed to focus as the substitute, right? You don't have to hopefully make too many calls in game or approach to the game, or how you're going to strategize that, but just being able to focus on what you need to accomplish as a player definitely helps.
And I think overall with Console Wars, when we have the fact that it's 2 separate regions with 2 separate platforms, and we talk about how they kind of have their different strategies, so it can be hard to predict when they do come head-to-head, but it's nice to see a little bit of a change-up in who does well. So do you think that Flashpoint will continue to dominate within the summer split? Or
I don't know about dominate. I just think Console is just going to get way more competitive all around, because teams are kind of going to be on the lookout for one another. They're not going to go in quite as confident, I don't think, as they have in times past, because now every region has won.
For me, I think it's specifically for Flashpoint. They're in this weird area where it was always 3-0s for EU PS4 until they got here. They started taking some losses. So I'm hoping some of the other teams are going to start it, but it's going to be slowly like 1 map this week, 2 maps next week, 3 maps, and finally, okay, we can take a set off of them. We can actually win in this area.
Well, after the console wars, we did have our big old LAN that had PPL finals and Masters. But first, talking about the PPL finals that took place, and Fnatic really managed to show out.
Yeah, I mean, a great spring final for sure, and one that would definitely allude at least to a little bit the question of the rest of the week was, how does anyone beat this Fnatic team when they're playing so well?
I feel like they've just been on a roller coaster with the thing, because Vegas, they were sitting at top coming in, and then they get brought down just because they lose the grand finals. And then right here, once again, they go right back up to the top, although it was a little shaky when they were up against Na'Vi. I really want to say that last game was kind of a coin flip as to who moves forward.
Yeah, it was a great set between them, but G2 definitely have to say they were a little bit more dominant than you probably would have expected. Envious have been having a great run of things, and though that tournament's great, you win some money, win a little trophy. I think what everyone's going to be remembering is everyone's performance at the Masters LAN. So it kind of stunk for Envy to have to go into the Masters event, or maybe it didn't stink. Maybe they kind of, all right, we've got some holes in our plan here, boys. We got to do a couple things differently here because we just got 4-1 by G2, a team that we're traditionally going to go toe-to-toe with.
Yeah, and the fact that you kind of have that moment to at least mentally separate the two events, even though they are within the same weekend, might help a little bit when you are trying to actually regroup after a defeat.
And I want to say it does fit that kind of role you were saying, where it's like, Fnatic, everyone's looking at them now because they're like, this team is dominating. This team is looking incredibly strong. Na'Vi was kind of able to keep it close, but no one else touched them. And then you see the way, like you said, that Envy was going into, from finals to Masters. You're like, that's the team we have to worry about. And Envy can kind of squeak on in like, okay, no one's looking at us right now. We don't have a target painted on our back. Everyone wants to figure out how to take down Fnatic.
Yeah.
G2 and Envy have been going back and forth, and then Na'Vi and Fnatic, obviously, and having that semifinal, and then going into the final where Fnatic 4-0'd. But even G2, I remember Custom saying, yeah, it was a 4-0, but it didn't feel like a 4-0. We're disappointed in the fact that that was the final scoreline.
Yeah, and then sometimes that's the way it goes. The history books will say one thing, but that set kind of felt another way. And having that dominant type of performance, I think I can say this as a Cavs fan, right? The year they won their championship over the Warriors, the next year, and they're like, yeah, we're the defending champs, but everyone knows that the Warriors are the team to beat. That was kind of how Envious and Fnatic felt going into this event, because that was their first win in Vegas, and they said it themselves. We have to show that we can do it again, that it wasn't a fluke, that we can have another great performance here to really cement ourselves and frankly, North America as a team, as a region that are contenders for these events.
Well, that Wednesday was the PPL finals, and then we moved into Masters, where we had a whole heap of teams from across the world join us here in Alpharetta, and what a hefty bracket it was, and a lot of upsets too.
I will say Chromospace, they're really, really good at Brightmarsh. They need to expand from Brightmarsh a little bit for these best of threes, because every single set I think they got one win, and it was always a 4-0 on Brightmarsh, and then they fell down every single time.
That was great. They absolutely smoked the Renegades on Brightmarsh. It was a lot of fun to watch, and you see some of those other 2-0s and things going on. I will say, I think myself and Burrito, frankly, a little bit disappointed in their showing. A lot of eyes were on them after their performance at HRX because of their dominant run through the losers bracket. They still had a decent run through the losers bracket, but it was, of course, Space Station Gaming that eventually took them down. And that's a fun new conversation to be talking about, is Brazil coming out of nowhere.
Yep. And the fact that two teams have worked so well together, I heard they're giving hearts to each other through the pain and everything, right?
Well, that was the thing, like talking to them, they were like, we're not only scrim partners, like they're friends. They love playing with each other. They like talking to each other. And like that's one of the things, like the moment after they end up going through that, Burrito loses, and they just get into a big hug with each other. And it's just like, these guys genuinely, like, they want to win. There's the competition part, but it's like, we're still friends at the end of the day. They're still going to be like, look, you lost, but it doesn't matter. We're still going to go home and play again.
Yeah, those are the two teams. They're trying to make each other better. There's no one else for them to scrim, and they don't like to scrim teams below them because, frankly, they just see it as, we're teaching these teams how to beat us. There's nothing that we're gaining out of this. So when they come to these events, they have to just work their butts off for weeks and try and get here a little bit early, try and do a little bit of boot camping, scrim nonstop in the days leading up to the event, just to feel like they've caught up enough to actually have a chance.
And that's a tough monkey to have on your back when you feel like you're playing catch up the entire time, but you have to also give them a lot of credit for trying to bring the international scene to the forefront when we have these lands. But looking at the actual finals that took place, age-old tale, we were just talking about it with the PPL finals portion, and Na'Vi actually went and defeated Fnatic.
I mean, I think this entire week, like starting in the PPL finals and then going into Masters, there was just a bunch of like scrim partners facing each other over and over and over again, and that's what it always seems to come down to with these two teams. But this time, I mean, Fnatic didn't look quite as dominant. They still had a lot of good moments, but it wasn't as overlasting as it was on the Wednesday before.
No, and I mean, this is that scrim partner matchup, right? This is that 50-50 coin flip, more or less. Though we do see Fnatic have the dominance when it comes to game day, it's just those LAN sets, those finals, that this is it type of moments that we see Na'Vi just consistently stepping up. Fnatic are a little bit more up and down, but when they are playing, they're just completely unbeatable when they're playing at their full 5 out of 5 stars. But Na'Vi are just that consistent, 4 out of 5 star team. And if you don't show up and be that good or better, then they are going to beat you.
But it's so also just crazy the fact that it's flip-flopping pretty much every single time they come into these major matchups with LAN. So that has to even keep lighting the fire for these two teams, because eventually you want to really assert yourself as the team to beat.
As far as I can tell, like, it's just Fnatic riding a roller coaster. They have their ups, they have their downs, and it always seems to go. I mean, that was all in the space of a month that they were like, okay, we're at the top, now we're not, now we're at the top again, now we're not, and it's just they couldn't quite hold it.
Make up your damn mind. Where you being? But I want to talk about something and more of just focusing on the players specifically and those DPS, those backliners from each team. Because through the first couple of games, we were having a bit of a conversation about Fishy and Bittner and be like, they're not doing very well. I think they were like 0-10 at one point on like Serpent Beach, if my memory is serving me correctly. And just that conversation is tough for me to have with myself, and I want to get y'all's opinions, because it's like, are they playing poorly, or is this just Na'Vi coming to show up on this day? Someone's dying in these engagement, right? And it might be one little shot, one little ability that we're not even catching on camera necessarily, that eventually kind of just gets out of. What if it's one shot every single time Bittner and Mutu are meeting? It's one shot that's just barely off the mark for Bittner, and that's leading to him being 0-5. It's not a trash day for Bittner, right? Maybe it's just a better day for Mutu. And I'm wondering, because, they did catch fire a little bit later in that set, and I'm like, well, it's not Na'Vi. They're not really playing noticeably worse all of a sudden, but for whatever reason, Fnatic are just starting to win fights.
I want to say it was a little bit of both, and I think it was kind of, you could see it if you go back to Vegas and you look at the way Fish Echo was kind of really disappointed there when they lost the finals. It kind of came in here where it's just, they didn't quite feel like they were playing the way they wanted to, but at the same time, you look at the other side, Mutu's on fire, you have Phoenix kind of flexing around onto all sorts of different champions that kind of makes it difficult to know what to expect out of him. So I feel like Na'Vi were playing that very well against Fnatic, just being able to play against the weaknesses they know they had. Like, okay, it's LAN, we know that they're going to have maybe a little bit more nerves online, so we can try and play against those. They don't know what to expect out of Phoenix here. Is it going to be Shaolin? Is he going to be bringing in the Khan? Is he going to just flex onto something completely different? What's he going to do? It was always that question factor, I think, in the draft.
I think that's a big part of it. I think Na'Vi played the Khan pretty much better than anyone at that event, and it goes back to that excitement to play, the giddiness to play it. Phoenix was loving it. He wanted to get it every game.
Yep. But we have some plays that are actually lined up to show you. Number 3 on the way with the Bugsy Quadra that we all got to witness. So if you didn't see it previously, then at least you're going to get to see it now.
This was so sick. This was right as he comes around the dark flank. Probably one of the toughest flanks to pull off, because there's only a small subset of champions that can actually make this work. He comes with the salvo spit, gets the double kill, Dragon Punch to find his third, and then, of course, he is able to find the fourth. Bugsy had an incredible tournament. There's no really timeline where anyone has an opinion that he was anything slowing down Fnatic. In fact, he was the only one, especially on Serpent Beach, when he was pulling Knessa, dude, he's just like marching his whole team forward. He's like, we're not going to lose this game. But they did, unfortunately, lose that game.
I mean, it was just, that Knessa was like frightening. Like, that was enough to make me think, if you're going up against them on Serpent Beach, like, you start first banning Knessa, where you're just like not letting Bugsy have that. He looked way too comfy.
Yeah.
It was a lot of fun to watch, and just him showing out to that full potential that he has. But we do have number 2 right on lock for our next one. I already missed it and what it actually is, but let's go into Wardoom. This was great.
This was actually a really big play, and I want to talk about a comment that G2 made specifically about it to me after the tournament. Was that this is Wardoom playing his game when he's feeling passive, it throws all of G2 off. But when he's confident enough that he can be out here doing this, making this type of space, getting these kills, that's when G2 is allowed to play like themselves, and it's really living or dying with Wardoom being aggressive.
Yeah, and now we get to see him in a whole different capacity, and we're actually going to be talking a bit later on about some of those changes. But for our next one, it's everyone's getting quadras, I guess.
Yeah,
Everyone's
no
getting
Pentas
quadras.
allowed.
Fisheko doing the same exact thing for our number one top replay. And here you have it on the Bomb King.
It's just perfect, too. I remember, because watching this, it was one of those moments that you could really feel, I think, where Fish Echo shines, and like the moments when he's not showing up. This was just him on Bomb King on Splitstone can be incredibly disgusting with how good he can be.
Yeah. You got to see basically the whole kit on display there except for the Grumpy Bomb. Grumpy Bomb's just going to slow me down. I don't need that ability. You saw some movement there, and mid-reload quad, definitely tough to pull off.
And everyone was kind of thinking going into the LAN, how's he going to do? We saw how upset he was in Las Vegas when he didn't perform as well, but then definitely came back full force with the rest of the team. What we do, in addition to these great plays, have some fail moments as well. And as much as we love the play that Bugsy brought to the table and you saw before, it wasn't always so squeaky clean.
No. Started from the bottom, and you got to have those flubbed moments, I think, to really enjoy the moments of glory here on Stone Keep. Bugsy played a lot of Xin this tournament, and he's one of the best at it. For reasons other than that. Small miscalculations. That actually, that spot on Bright Marsh that this always happens at?
Yeah.
When you're going down onto the docks and those staircases, so many people dash because when you leave the crest of the staircase, you'll carry your momentum and you'll just fly off, and I think that's just a case of that.
And I'm wondering now, looking at his loadout, if he had any increased distance on World. Like, if he just, even like 10%, and it's just like, I could have landed that if I didn't have that card.
Yeah.
But it's in my loadout, and I increased 20%. And that just pushed me over the edge.
Well, what are you going to do?
He wanted to go see the water, guys. I don't know what you're talking about. Always intentional. But
He's fallen into the Realm Royale map.
Okay, there you go. But also, we did have an interview that I believe you actually did with Bitey while he was in town. So let's take a look at what he has to say.
Hey guys, sitting here with the captain of SK Gaming, Mr. Bitey. He's been around the block. SK, you've played for Eager, you've played for a lot of teams. You're here actually for the spring fling. How was that? Did you have fun with your friends?
I had so much fun. You see me and the Bork. We were all over the place. I played my first game of Smite.
Your first game of Smite. How was that? Who did you play?
It was awful.
It was awful.
I was so confused. I played two people.
No one starts at the top.
I played big guy with the sword. He was Asian.
You played Guan Yu.
Guan Yu. And then F-Dot was like, get him off of that. Get him over here.
Because you're a shooter player. You had to play something ranged.
And I went over to Ra, the sun god, and his gun was really short, and I still was feeding him. I told him I'm going to play carry or I'm going to play feed, and I made the commitment. I figured out. The game said do the tutorial, and I'm like, let's go. Barracuda came over, tried to help. And it didn't help.
Hell yeah. Well, we got the PPL starting up real quick here, getting right into the summer split. Spring split probably didn't go as planned. How's the team morale? How's everybody feeling about everything? You guys in a bit of a rebuilding phase, or what's the deal with SK
I would say that's
gaming?
a good way to put it, like rebuilding. I was happy with how we did at Vegas, but I'll just hint there will be some changes, which maybe by the time this comes out might have already been announced, so they'll be in the works here.
All right. Well, I won't ask you to reveal anything. What I do actually want to talk about is a roster change that has already been revealed. Na'Vi, they're saying goodbye to Unbelievable in place of Lazy. And I want to talk about, because everyone was a little bit up in arms, and it's understandable, right? They just won a tournament. Same thing happened to Spunky, right? He wins a tournament and then gets removed from the team. And talk about what else goes into building a team, building a dynamic, building an environment other than just being mechanically good.
Like, team dynamics are like the unsung thing. You have all these storylines, and I'm just gonna be honest, most of them are just fabricated for the viewer. Like when casters talk about teams and what's going on, usually you get like the pleasant sunny face of it, but in reality teams are pretty dynamic. You have 5 personalities trying to work together towards a common goal, and everybody might have a slightly different opinion, and how you share those opinions and how you communicate with each other is a huge fact on like team health. Like, it's a unit. Your job is to stay together, to work together towards a common goal, and if you're losing, things, they grind, and there are so many different small things about how people get along and the kinds of people that get along. I mean, I think Unbelievable is an amazing player, but unless you're on that team, unless you know the inner workings of the personalities working together, what do they say in private to each other about each other, Like when things aren't going well, do people, I think it was his fault. It might have been his fault. It could have been his fault. But when you win, it's hard to see that. The Na'Vi managers, they did write up their explanations and reasonings why, and I think it's pretty justified. I mean, that's one of the rare internal views you get to see of a team is like, these are our problems. These are why we're doing this. This is why we're committing to this. This is why we're pulling somebody else in. And to me, it made perfect sense, and you feel for Unbelievable for sure.
Absolutely.
But it's like he ended it on a big W, so I'm sure we'll see him again in the near future.
Yeah, I mean, someone's definitely got to be looking to pick him up. And talking a little bit, because how many teams have you built and kind of been around, and you've seen the ups and the downs. So when you talk about personalities versus like a approach to the game, I almost feel like when you look at that Na'Vi situation, it's got to be just how can someone from the outside really judge it? Because you don't know what's going on the inside there. And maybe it is completely justified. We don't know how he was working with the team, or maybe he just didn't agree on the approach. Have you ever had a situation like that where great player, but just doesn't agree on how to approach the game, the style of what the team wants to, achieve with?
I've had histories of that. I've been the one,
Yeah.
not in Paladins, not in Paladins, but 10 years ago, I'll tell you the truth. Like I once tried to mutiny a team. It did not work. I had one buddy with me. We had like everybody was it was the most awkward, frustrating, angry, a lot of emotions. I can just tell you right now, it feels terrible when you have the meeting with everybody. Yeah, that sounds good. That sounds good. Meeting night comes around. All right, guys, got some bad news. Me and, my buddy, our line shout out. I don't even know if he watches, but that was me and him. And it did not go our way. It was awful, and there's really only two ways you do that. You walk off, or really you stay and it goes your way. So,
yeah.
I mean, it's so, at the end of the day, you want to be friends still with everybody. Like, there's a lot of money on the line. There's livelihoods. There's jobs now.
Right.
So that extra pressure, now that you're the captain of a team, you're trying to figure out everything. You want to be friends, but at the same time, you want to win.
Yeah.
So it's just weighing, like, what is the right decision long term? We've just won this event. Well, we still had problems during the season. Is it better to replace them? And this is in the Na'Vi case. And, I mean, if they make that determination, who am I to judge what they want to do with their team?
Yeah, exactly. And talking about kind of friends, because you were playing with a very tight-knit group of friends, Rai and Shady Shades way back in the day, players that you've played with for a long time. And we only see the external faces. And for us, at least from outside looking in, it always felt like you were sort of in the driver's seat. Whether that was true or not, you were just the biggest personality. And talk now about you had to, break up a team with a lot of friends. And how did you kind of come to that decision? Because you're right, it is livelihoods on the line at the end of the day.
So probably the hardest release I had to do, and it was a team decision. Like whenever I decide to let somebody go, it's easy when they're rude and I don't like this team anyway. It's really easy when you have a toxic personality. It doesn't fit. But when the team's kind of all leaning on like, hey, we should let go of this one guy. Hey, these are his issues. These are his issues. Do you agree? Do you agree? Yeah. And it's like, man, I kind of guess I see it too. And so I approach it more like a communal thing. Like if everybody really thinks we have to do it, then I'll be the one to deliver the news. And that's probably the hardest thing is like that one I was crying about, honestly. Like I felt awful because we'd been together for a year and a half, but it's just something that comes around. And, I probably took it harder than Arai did at the time. So it just, whether I do it the right or the wrong way, it's always a hard choice on, because I believe in making people better, but at the same time, you got to be realistic now with all this pressure of like you need to perform too. So it's a lot different now that the PPL is in full swing, and that's your job.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot to it, guys. Making these decisions is not easy. Sometimes it has to be with a friend. That's never an easy thing to do, but it's getting real. The PPL does have a lot of pressure on these guys to perform. But, thank you so much, Bitey, for coming out, hanging out, and performing in the Spring Fling. It was a lot of fun to watch. And we're going to send it back over to the desk. Lovely
been
stuff there, you
revealed.
two. Lovely stuff.
We're you know, really
You had an
trying to do our best
I don't know what to do
BTS
with my hands
impression.
moment there.
That's because she has this thing and she can do it so seamlessly. And there was one day we actually sat down and I did it and we did it in tandem and I completely forgot like 2 days
What
later.
was that? Was that like the Beyonce like single lady like hand
It's
pump
just
thing?
like I don't know, we used to do it on the step team and stuff, like work it into dances. And
Oh,
stuff.
man.
It was just like a class. It was like an easy like throw in like we don't know what choreography to put here. Let's just do that thing. But we're getting.
Can't just throw that thing on Gore, all right? He wasn't on that step team.
We'll do.
I got
like-
part of it. I just don't get it in the right order
Oh,
or
man.
always the right steps in the right place.
We're working on it. We're working on it.
Not good at choreography.
But we have something extra special, as you know, I look up to Chris Hardwick a lot. He's one of my favorite celebrities, and he likes to throw around points when people answer things in a certain way. I don't know if you've seen any of his shows, but I'm going to grill y'all about some question of the meta, looking back at the LAN, and I have the points power. So, my first question to you.
Do I look worried?
Good poker face. I feel like there's some worry stemming in there
Coming
somewhere.
away with a W.
all right,
Man,
all
they
right.
even have a
well.
scoreboard.
Oh yeah, they got
Oh,
it all
damn.
prepped and everything. But first, and you know what? I'm gonna throw it to Gore first. Give him the opportunity.
Good.
What,
I don't want him playing off my answers.
what champion do you think was the most impactful during the LAN experience, or just the number one talk?
I think Maeve would probably be the one that I'd put at the top of that list just because of the fact that she was either first pick, first ban for a lot of teams, and when she got through, she just wrecked people.
All right, all right. Mhm.
I would say Khan. I think it's the make or break. I think he was the brand new champion, and I think that he allowed characters like Maeve. We've had instances of Maeve failing. We didn't have many instances of Khan failing because he brought that new element to the table where people just didn't know what it took to deal with him, as well as the fact that he could flex and pair with other flanks like Xin and just make sort of a flank really, really impactful.
All right, I'm gonna give Gore 17 points for your contribution. I'm gonna give you 15. You're a little tryhard with your extended explanation.
Darn.
So,
Your extended explanation.
so that's what we
I
got.
like the arbitrary 17
Yeah,
as well.
right.
That was a 17-point answer. Easy clap. Easy
Hey,
clap for
I have-
Gore.
I have a whole formula
Go
and
for it.
everything. But as far as moving forward, we got some roster changes that have happened with Wardoom and Vex, and we were just talking about Umbi getting taken off, Lazy, all of that. So, starting off with Nick, what do you think is the most intriguing roster change to you, or going to be the most impactful for their team?
Well, without trying too hard, Lazy.
Okay.
Okay. I was waiting for a little bit more.
You got to
Going
play the
all way in
competition.
You gotta-
the
yeah,
other
good point.
direction.
I'm actually going to have to say the Wardoom, not necessarily the drop from G2, but the pickup on SK. I'm kind of wondering how that dynamic is going to work.
Okay. Okay. You know what? I'll I'll commend you for actually going on the opposite direction. You're gonna get a whole 13 points.
I don't care.
And you're no, scratch that. You're gonna get 8 points for your lack of caring, and then Gore is gonna get 13 points. So you're just digging your own grave over there. But another announcement that was made talking about Simsalute. We didn't get to see him at all during the spring split. Now he'll be making an appearance. So Gore, just your general thoughts on that.
As long as he learned his lesson from the last time and the reasons that he got dropped, which I'm not going to go into, as long as he's learned that and he's coming in, he's still a great player, and I think it's going to be a big pickup for NIP.
I think it's a risk, quite frankly, for those reasons, right? If he's, going to get NIP blacklisted from scrims and people aren't going to want to play with them for fear of their strats being leaked and stuff like that, I think it's a risk, but it's one I guess NIP were willing to take.
All right. So another question for you, the thoughts on Khan. You just mentioned actually how he was performing during the LAN and the buffs coming to him.
Well, the biggest thing I think is the level of coordination at that event. I don't think you see that type of impact without that level of coordination because it's something like that. I think it'll be a good duo queue pick, like a Torvald sort of enabling thing. But the fact that he gets buffed, I think there's two things playing into it. It's like, yes, it looks good from our point of view, but those are the best teams in the world. And B, it's a new champion. There's always that element of mystery when they first come out, right? How is this exactly meant to be played? I think people just slowly get better at playing with and against it. So the fact that the buffs come through now, people are going to start to figure it out, and I think he's going to go from kind of sleeper to probably pretty overstated here in the meta.
Cool. What about you, Gore?
I think he's going to be overstated in the meta as well. I mean, he has 3 talents that are really good. The other day we got into it and we were running Storm of Bullets and
Luminary
Cheers,
yeah.
and you were essentially fragging with the DPS. Like, you were up there getting the same amount of damage, if not more than some of the players. So I think he's gone from some teams are going to look at trying to kind of incorporate him to everybody wants this pick.
All right. Well, you just answered 2 questions back to back, so I'm going to double up the points. You know what? I'm going to go with a 42 for
Easy.
you.
You're going to put the pressure on production. Do this math. Some quick maths in the back line real quick. Oh, my God.
And a whopping 38.5 for Gore.
0.5. I want to see if the graphic can encompass that.
Another easy clap for Goremizer.
Hey,
68.5.
There we go. So congratulations, Goremizer, for winning our first official.
That 3.5 point lead.
This is what you get for being so cocky right at the start, man.
I didn't
You know, you have the VOD to review when you go back, and then during
What
the
happened to
Esports.
Goremizer's score?
It turned into like like a winking
Period.
frowny face.
Open parentheses.
Well, we're going to take a break from this game and take a look at some memes,
Good, I
because
hate
we've
this
got
game.
them in line for you.
Deja vu, I just been in this place before. Higher on the street, and I know it's my time to go. Going new, and the search is I'm gonna step on the gas and be a lover.
It's time to stop!
Give your meat a good old rub.
Yeah, boy.
That's a lot of damage. How about a little more?
I'm a fire in my
We are about to witness one of the great phenomena of the natural world.
And now for something completely different.
школе в коробке сдавал. Наркота, отстойник класса, учит вас школа хардбаса. Нам хардбасерам давно не в тему данное говно. Прошивай боб и матрас в наших плеерах хардбас. СПБ и МСК, наш проект два города. Пациков не брет апстеп, через бочку рубит клэп. Люди все без препаратов, будьте рад для деградатов. Кто хардбасить перестал, знайте все наркотикал. Пацаны наркотикал, в школе в коробке сдавал. Наркота, отстойник класса, учит.
Once upon a time in the West, madman lost his damn mind in the West. Loveless, kidnapper down, nothing less. Now I must put this behind you the test. Then through the shadows, in the saddle, ready for battle. Bring all your poison, and kind of poison. Behind my back, all everything you did, front and center. Now when you look back here, you got
Wow.
Shout out to Joe for putting that together. And we got even the Can You Feel Me remix in the end.
Can you feel the wild, wild west?
With the wiki.
Wow, wow.
Man,
That was S tier, man.
That was
was
great.
solid stuff.
anytime I think I can't love Phoenix more, I see him just can't
You see him
seem
scooting
freaking
along at
scoot
desk.
along. What are you doing, man? What are you doing, man? I like the flavor. But overall, a lot of fun moments to be had in that LAN, and I think that we have a lot to look forward to working towards our next segments of LAN with our summer split. We're now in the regular season for the split, taking a look at how that's going to be going with the scheduling. We have a lot going on, actually, starting today.
Yeah, normally we would broadcast PPL on the weekends, but as you can see now, it's going to be all during the week, Monday through Friday. Your originally scheduled programming here. We've got our Esports Weekly, all of our console stuff taking place today. On Monday, just a little bit after the show action. Then you can see the PPL and the PGS will be kind of sprinkled around the rest of the week, as well as the fact that we're only showing the finals from now on for those PGS games to be able to fit everything in the Monday through Friday time frame.
Yep, so that's going to just basically switch up how we're going, but the first PPL match that we will be actually witnessing tomorrow is going to be Mouse versus VP, which we've seen before. And Gora, I want to get your thoughts on this match.
I mean, this is one that I think in most, like if we just went back to where it was when they went 5 games, they were really incredibly close, and kind of put a pin in it there, then these teams could say it. But I think Mouse has improved since then. VP is still kind of a question mark to me. It feels like they know what's wrong, but they don't know how to fix what's wrong just yet. So I feel like Mouse has kind of got the upper hand in that matchup, and it still might go like 4 or 5 games, but I think they're going to be the ones that overall have control.
And then one talking point that we've actually mentioned multiple times for a VP, when you have Elven Path at the center and everyone working around, and they've taken all this time to learn, do you think that we'll see some maybe breakthrough moments as they come together in the summer split?
I mean, he's always the talking point for this team until we start to see some of the other guys gain traction or just bring an identity, right? He's switching around. He's making a lot of changes because it's his team, I think, at the end of the day. He's the one that put it together, and he's the one that's going to put himself wherever he wants to be. Whether that's the right place or not for the team to have the best possible outcome, we have yet to see.
And I'm sure both of these teams are hoping that they don't get called the battle for the bottom again, because that's kind of what it ended up being when they would face off during the last split. But everyone coming in with a little bit of a clean slate. You get to shake things off. Didn't get to be at the LANs last time around, but both these teams are going to fight hard.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, it is still the PPL, right?
Yeah.
You're the worst of the best, the worst of the top 5 teams in the world, which isn't the worst thing at the end of the day, but it does, I guess, think to have that as your defining title.
So all of us made some predictions going into this first matchup. So Gore, why don't you talk us through yours?
I mean, again, when it comes down to it, I feel like Mouse overall just have more control, and I feel like they were improving a lot as a team. I think sticking together. I can't remember if Virtus Pro have any changes coming into this split, but even with the way they were playing before, it just felt like they were just rough moments and never a single, other than Elven Path, I want to say somebody standing forward and just having consistent play. So I feel like Mouse has that leg up.
Exactly. You know, in week 1, there is roster changes happening for VP, to my knowledge, none for Mouse Sports, right? So just the continued building, improving with that roster versus VP have to do it all over again now. It is only 1 to my knowledge, but I think, Mouse are going to be able to take this at least in the first week before we have a chance to really see what VP develop into.
All right, so both of you on the record for Mouse Sports defeating Virtus Pro in our first PPL match taking place tomorrow. And then actually we have multiple matches, but taking a look at my pick, it's basically the same explanation. Mouse, they're just having more consistency going into this match and facing off against Virtus Pro. But then following that, it's going to be Ninjas in Pajamas versus Virtus Pro.
Yeah, and I think traditionally would have been an NIP victory, as well as with the roster change. That would have been the big question mark that would have tipped the scales. But it's Simsalo for Lazy, and it's almost a seamless transition in terms of what they can play. Champion Pool Bomb King is the big one for me. Simsalo, it's been a long time since we've seen him compete at this level, so that is the big question mark.
And really, when it comes down to it, looking at the way they were playing, it was still solid number 3, I guess, when it comes down to it. They were really good where they were.
Yeah.
Even when they were bringing someone in new for Lazy during the last week, it's like, well, you're still kind of at the same level that you were. The 4 members are consistent enough that the 5th might make or break something going forward, but it's not going to bring them down. And I think that's kind of where it comes to Virtus Pro have too many issues, whereas NIP are just going to be like, okay, plug and play.
Yeah, you got a lot of players that have been around for a while, like Bird, for instance. He's been consistent. He's still there on the NIP roster.
Right. I will say, Bird and all these old veterans, it feels like they're no longer leading the charge in terms of innovating strategies and things and figuring new ways to win out. So I will say, yes, they are an incredible team, and they are going to stay that way, but things are changing around them, right? Whether they fall or whether they rise, I don't think is being decided much by them.
Yeah, and it's just so weird thinking we had these lands where some of these players that have been around for so long weren't there.
Sheepa, Perdo, Bird, Lazy, Bonker since he joined the scene. It was all of their first times missing an event.
Cool. Well, starting off with you, Nick, what's your prediction for this match?
NIP. Still.
Right. Yeah, Gore.
NIP.
Yeah, same here.
That's the way VP is going to go. Until proven otherwise, it's how can you vote against him? Unless you're like a huge Mary Jane fan. That's the guy who they swapped out for MTZ. Unless you're just the biggest Mary Jane fan, you think he's going to change the world. That's kind of the way I think you have to vote.
I am a big Mary Jane fan, but I'm a bigger
Whoa,
MTZ
Gore,
fan.
not on broadcast. Come on, bro.
He's actually a really good sniper. That was actually the thing.
Yeah.
The reason I remember his name so vividly is just because I remember watching him like, okay, this guy's going Kinessa on Frog Isle. How's it going to work? And then he just blew it out of the park. Like, it was incredible that one day. So I'm kind of interested to see where he fits.
I am stoked to see that because we've seen the Strix, Kinessa, Cassie. Mary Jane tends to bring a lot of those in full force. But moving on to our next match, going into the NA region, it's going to be Renegades versus Splice up first. So,
and this is a big one, man.
Yeah.
I want to say I'm really happy for Splice, for Ozone in particular, because I think that's a guy that has just been busting his ass ever since he came in to play Paladins, and now finally getting a shot in the PPL under the banner of Splice. That being said, Renegades are a damn good team, and I'm still giving it to them week one.
Now, this is one of those ones I actually 100% can't remember what I picked, but I think I know the same reasoning I went through with it, and it's just that we have Splice being picked up, and they regularly beat Gangstars. Renegades was able to beat them, and it's in that area where it's like they're a really strong team, but I think Splice is going to experience that dysphoria that is moving into the PPL that is going to be completely different than what they're used to right now. Ricotta, a couple of them do have that experience, but this is the moment where it's like the real, I want to say, like, smackdown for him. Like, you have to recognize this is not the same horse that you rode in on.
Yeah, and Renegades with people like Loki that have been on that roster and just continuing with that strength of play that he's had in the past.
It's incredible what he was able to accomplish, as well as someone stepping up to be that leader, I think, for the Renegades, because I can see Splice easily becoming a new Team Envy in the fact that they are just so hungry to prove themselves with, you know, the new leadership, new roster for the most part. You got a couple of guys that have played in the spring split for Splice, but overall, it's going to be a brand new team, and one that's, you know, we got to see how they do. We got to see how they figure it out and how they probably realistically bounce back from a couple of hefty losses in probably the first week or two.
Yeah.
So talking about predictions, you said Renegades will take it.
RNG.
Are you waiting for your graphic to
No,
pop up
I'm
before
still.
you?
I'm gonna say I think I went with Renegades, and I'm still sticking with Renegades. If I did, if it was Splice, then I'm just very hopeful for him.
Gore Miser disagrees with Gore Miser on today's segment.
Oh man. Well, it looks like
40 points for Gore Miser. Thanks, Gore Miser.
Yeah, bring the points back, Blake. Go do some more fast maths for you.
Let's get rewarded points based on how right we were.
Okay.
See, at least then we have something to base it on.
Well, then we got to bring in series scores and stuff like that.
Yeah. Well.
Oh man, then it gets all.
We'll work something out.
We'll figure it out. We can be arbitrary, as Gabby has shown us with our point totals.
Hey, I put a lot of thought into those point totals,
yeah,
okay? I was thinking
Quick
thoroughly,
maths.
but
I don't know. There were no negative numbers in there.
I felt like I was going to get a negative number there for a second.
I was waiting for it to come out. Like, all right, negative 10 points.
Because she went from like 17 to like in the 20s, and then she hit me with a 13, and then I made fun of her, and then I was like, I'm going in the red here, boys. I'm going in the red.
Well, we could go down a whole path about points and everything. You know, I'll fill you in later on my intricate point selection skills, but it's actually SK versus Splice that are going to be the next match to talk about. And what are your thoughts on with SK's change with Wardoom?
Got to give this one to SK for me personally. I think there's going to be a potential for a really strong roster swap here for SK specifically, because I think Wardoom is probably going to continue to play frontline. We have to assume. We saw a little bit of Saris from him in the spring split, but I don't know if that's the way that SK are going to continue. The question is, right, they're replacing him for Vex, so does he go on support here? On the flip of that, if he stays frontline, I think you've got Wiffle. I think you've got Wardoom on the front line, and that's going to be super strong, great. And then I think Bitey might have his chance to finally play DPS, right? Because he's a guy that just grinds every character in the game so much, and I think that's where his heart truly lies. So it's about finding another support to slot in behind Wardoom.
I think this is like probably the best week for Splice to be able to try and prove themselves, or at least the best way to start things out, where it's just like you're going up against teams that feasibly, like, you could beat them. This is your time to be able to come out and put like a giant narc on your back and say,
you're right,
we are good enough to be able to take PPL teams down. At the same time, The teams they're going up against are here, and they've been here for a while and for a reason. It's the same thing you said. SK is incredibly strong. They have a lot of players that can flex onto a lot of things. And I remember actually talking to Bitey, him saying that he didn't really want to change anyone's role, but if he has to, he doesn't mind being able to say, like, look, this is what you're playing now. You just have to do it.
And we'll have to see if that ends up being, that's a long-term investment when you're doing those types of role swaps. If we see it in week 1, it could be worth it in the long run for SK, but if they do, that's going to make them more vulnerable in week 1.
So prediction-wise, you said SK, and then are you in that same boat of SK? So I think that when it comes to teams like Splice, a lot of us are in that, like you said, wait until you prove yourself kind of aspect. Wait, I'm getting word that you.
I can't remember what I picked.
What was that?
I feel like
no,
this one, like what I said, like I think this is actually really good for it. SK is going to be strong. But again, Splice, I mean, first off, they went 3 games with Gangstars.
You need 2 single shots for this segment.
Yeah.
It's called Gore versus Gore.
Gore versus
2 single
Gore.
shots.
Dude,
One, you look at it this way, and then you're like, well, really? I mean, you swap cameras to this single.
No matter what, I can come up with an argument for it. Either way, in this one, SK, they look strong. Splice are a team that's played a lot together, and with the fact that bringing in a new member, they were really close to Gangstars during Vegas, probably a little bit better now since they've had a couple weeks, and of course, once you get a close call like that with a team at the level where it's, I want to say number 2 overall in the NAPGS, then you start getting a little scared, and you crack down. So SK, I'm hoping, are going to be able to come through, but Splice, I think, again, this is probably their best week to be able to take a game.
It's not a far-fetched prediction. I don't think. I mean, we brought up the fact that SK, if they are making a lot of role roster changes, that's going to be their most vulnerable state.
Gore just doesn't want to be wrong. He's covering both bases.
Yeah. See, no matter what, I'm right.
See, I made the right prediction.
Except I'm up there as Splice, so Splice better win.
Bets are hedged here.
Next up, though, it's Fnatic versus Mouse. So we've just seen the way Fnatic has been performing, and I think I have a feeling of what y'all are going to say starting off with Gore.
I don't know if I actually have a lot I can say about this one. I'm just going to say Fnatic.
You don't need to.
Like, Fnatic.
It is what it is, I think, at this point.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And Bugsy, we talked about him plenty
I'm literally
earlier.
not going to tell you my prediction.
Well,
I'm going to let you assume.
Choice.
Bugsy spent. This is the highlight we got to see. Oh, man. I kind of flamed him for this one, too, and he was kind of like, for the team.
But he had a lot of great moments. I mean, we can't harp on it enough. Just one of the people that's been around for a while. He serves as that flex. Whatever his team needs him to do, he's ready to do it.
And I would just rather see him play Zen basically all day long. I think it's probably my favorite champion. He doesn't get to play a lot of Drogoz anymore. We got to see it a couple times at the Masters event, and it's still great, but I think Zen is one of the most fun champions to watch him play.
And I think it's great for your team when you have someone where it's like, well, we want to put you on Zen, you're going to be great there. If they take away Zen, then we can put you on like Drogoz. Well, if they take away Drogoz, we can put you on something like no matter what, you just have something like, well, Bugsy, you're really good at this champ. Let's just go ahead and play that one this time.
Yeah, and I think that's why they are who they are.
With predictions, though, Gore, are you 100%? Do you recall what you said
for
this one?
I remember this one. There is no way for me to, even in my best days, I don't think I could give Mouse the good enough reasoning to pull them over Fnatic. I might be able to say it could be close. They might be able to get a game, but I don't think it'd ever be a full set. At least not right now.
So Fnatic most likely going to take the victory against Mouse, and then they also have a match against Na'Vi. And I think this is where maybe we'll see a little bit of shifting in our predictions. I don't know what y'all predicted or anything, but Nick, it's the rematch that we've seen again and again and again.
Yeah, and Na'Vi's the only team that you can consistently make an argument for beating Fnatic, but in the fact that, it has been, traditionally Fnatic all across the online stages, I do think Fnatic is the better online team.
That's actually exactly what I was going to say, is just when it comes down to the fact, if it was LAN, I have no idea which one to give the lead to, but because it's online, I think Fnatic, for some reason, it's just when they play online, they seem a lot more comfortable. I think Khan is going to play a big role in this setup, or this matchup, just because these two teams, I want to know if Fnatic is going to pull it in because of his buffs. Is he going to be strong enough, or are we going to see Na'Vi kind of keep that?
Also, roster changes. It's lazy. Slotting in for Unbi.
Keep forgetting about that.
What the hell is going to happen to Na'Vi? Is this going to be lazy? Traditionally a DPS player. What's he going to be playing? Phoenix has been towing the line for some time. Unbi's being replaced, which was hard and fast Na'Vi's main tank player. So a lot of questions in the first week of the PPL for Not As Sincere.
And it's so hard to predict how quickly they will adapt when they make a roster change like that, right? Because Lazy's been around for a long time, so it's not a matter of when you look at VP and you bring new guys in and you're more thinking that way. It's, hey, we're bringing a very skilled veteran onto our team. Now we have to make sure that we all mesh together.
But it's a 2-week turnaround, right? The Masters LAN just closed. these guys takes them 2 days to get back to where they live in Europe, and then you got to get scrims all scheduled. Maybe people taking a couple days off here and there. Lazy has to kind of sit there, twiddle his thumbs, and wait for the opportunity to start beginning practicing with his team, whatever role he's going to fulfill doing that.
Yep, and he wasn't in the last couple of weeks of the last regular season of PPL as well, so he's been waiting for a moment to come through. But as far as predictions go, seemed like you were leaning towards Fnatic with this one.
Yeah, still Fnatic here for me.
Same. Fnatic's just looking too strong, and I think they've been too consistent.
So I guess we do just still have the same thing for this one. I was hoping for a little bit of a switch up, but in the online season, they just seem to be always really consistent. And then going back over to NA, we have G2 versus Renegades actually facing off.
Yeah, and I go G2 here slightly. I think the Renegades have a potential here, it's sort of like the argument if you want to say it like the SK and the Splice matchup. I think there is potential here for Renegades to beat G2. Given they made it some pretty big changes here. They lost Wardoom, and they've brought in Vex. And Vex, you have to imagine, is playing support, which leaves Cuskcutie to probably frontline for this team. You don't necessarily know, though, and I think if they get caught up in these changes or start to second-guess themselves, which has happened to G2 in terms of, oh, that didn't work. We can play so many things, though, that what do we want to play? When things aren't going well, I think sometimes having so many options throws G2 off a little bit.
It kind of feels as though we've had a little bit more of these teams, specifically Navi and G2 now, are really playing hard into that 3 DPS meta, and that's where I think a lot of these pickups are coming, where it's just like, all right, we're going to drop down to only having our one frontline player, and we're just going to all in and hope that this meta stays long enough for this to make a big difference. Just because if it does go back to, double frontline at one point, someone's going to have to make a bigger change, and I feel like there's a lot of players now on these rosters that might not have the exact same experience that the others would have.
And I'm being told that Dosups is checked in as the front line for this team, hard and fast, which is a little strange to me, given that, look at this.
And we talked about it so much. How
He's the guy that was flexing. Why? I don't know. I mean, again, kind of the same thing. I'm not going to judge you on these types of decisions yet. There's obviously a reason I have full faith and trust in all those G2 boys that they're making the right call for their team, but it's just curious to me.
Yeah, and I think Cuss has always been ready to flex. It's just that he's been the support for so long, people kind of forgot about that aspect. So I am curious to see
Cuss
how
does frag.
Yeah,
he does frag pretty hard.
There are some videos out there, yeah, so I'm sure he's excited to bring that into the PPL. But as far as predictions go, then, Gore, who do you have?
I have G2 for this one just because with the way things have been going, even though Renegades I think are strong, I feel like it's just, okay, you're taking one player who, whatever issues there were, and replacing him with another very good player. I don't think it's going to change too much in their lineup.
Yeah, I've got G2 as well because of the flawless swap in here for Vex going in for support.
Same. So G2 to take Renegades. That's the predictions over here on the desk, but they are also facing off against Envy, and that will be our last match for the PPL of the week.
See, now this is where I can't remember if I put Envy or G2. This could be...
Distinctly remember what I put.
I think this one could be an easy coin flip. I probably put G2 here because I think the fact that Vex is slotting in as support, he's the biggest question mark. The rest of G2 are so flexible, you could sell me on probably any lineup of the rest of the roles being filled out by those 4 players. But the fact that I think that they are continuing to be pretty dominant here in North America, but again, it's a 49-51 matchup either way.
And it's just one of those things for me, it is 100% just consistency. The fact that you have a new player versus a team that's already been giving you trouble, I think is just enough to give Envy a leg up. And I think it's one of those things that's sticking together. I understand when there are things like going wrong in the team, either personality clashes, disagreements, whatever's going on. When you do have to replace someone, I get that, but I think sticking together is going to be Envy's strong suit for this one.
Yeah, I could see this being a close game either way or an easy clap for Envy. I don't see this being an easy clap for G2.
Right, and as far as predictions go, then you seem to just slightly go in the way of G2. Are you kind of feeling Envy over there?
I kind of am the same way, although I think it's more like 60-40 Envy. I think they have a better chance of winning it overall, but there's still that question mark of, you're bringing in Vex. Like, you're bringing in someone who knows what they're doing. It's not going to be like, okay, well, we grabbed X player who's on the 4th place PGS team and we think we can make him work. We're bringing in someone who knows what he's doing. He's going to be consistent. We're going to play well.
And you got to remember, slightly before you guys came in, he was the 6th man for this roster, for the Wardoom, Dosups, Cuss, Bodies, and Evil Eye roster at DreamHack. He was their coach sub, so he has already synergy built with these guys, has probably played and scrimmed with these guys before. So again, I think it's a really easy slot in.
Yeah, I think this was just also probably the toughest of predictions out of all the
Easily,
matches, and kind of going back and forth. I ended up going with Envy because of maybe that stability right off the bat. I don't know how G2 and all of them have been spending the last week or so, but we also have, in addition to the PPL, we have PGS coming on back, and we saw a lot of those teams here for the LAN with Space Station Gaming and Burrito still holding it down for their regions.
Yeah, and it's really cool to watch the international scene overall get a little bit closer again. Talking about how we're changing the schedule slightly. Normally we'll show all the semifinals and the finals for these regions, but just for the ability to condense the schedule down to Monday through Friday for your viewing convenience, we're just doing the best of 5 finals in each of these regions. Europe and Brazil will be on Tuesday, OCE and NA on Wednesday, Southeast Asia, they're on Thursday.
So, Gore, are there any teams in particular you have your eyes on after this past LAN and such?
I mean, Space Station, Burrito are obviously the ones at the top of that list. Chroma Space I still have my eye on because
Absolutely.
I feel like in all of this, like the PGS has been the breeding grounds. A lot of the members that were on Ovim's team are now on Virtus Pro. A lot of the people that we've seen in the PGS, I mean, Toxicity is now Splice. So this is the place for these teams to prove themselves, and I think a lot of them are making names for themselves. Burrito and Space Station, I think, are leading the way overall in the international scene, but everyone else is just as strong.
Yeah, and I want to keep an eye specifically on Space Station because of this player FRZ guy. They were talking about how his situation is one of, a strict household, not a lot of games being allowed to be played,
Still
that
in
type of
school.
thing. It's still in school and needing a good showing. So was this a good enough showing to convince FRZ God's mommy and daddy that he is the real deal, Holyfield? He is going to be here to stay, and he's going to have an impact on this scene if he's allowed to kind of flourish and develop. Sort of like Bittner. Bittner quit school to just pursue this full time. If FRZ God is allowed to do that, I think Space Station get pretty damn scary.
Only time will tell. But thanks to both of you for joining us here with Esports Weekly. We do have another broadcast happening later on Mixer, exclusively 3 p.m. for our console series. And that's actually going to be best of threes now, and we have all of them right in a row for you. So do not miss that opportunity. So until then, see you later.
Sorry, didn't mean to, but I heard you cannot do it to me.